So Colin and Pora, the idea of vision, okay, it's really important, and it kind of starts to talk about, what are some core values and core purpose of companies. So it opens up the discussion of terminal and instrumental values. So the way that you can look at it is terminal values are values that you would aspire to be at the end of your existence. So maybe you want to be well respected. That's something that you want to have at the end of the terminal value. Instrumental values are the values that you have in place right now that will help you achieve those terminal values. Okay, and that's kind of important for us to understand the context of Colin and Porras, because we do have to understand the values of the company and the purpose of the company. So if your values differ from the teammates in school project, it can have a huge impact on you. So again, I'm not going to get details. I don't want to waste too much time, but I'll give you an example. Is let's say that you're doing a project, and maybe 2 people on a team are environmentalists and 2 people on a team are more pure capitalists. Let's just say, I'm giving a bit of an extreme example, but I'm sure it could happen in John Molson Business School. So 2 of them are really hardcore environmentalists, and their 2 are maybe much more pure capitalist, traditional capitalist. It may be very hard for the group to agree because the values differ completely. Right? An environmentalist might place equal value on environment and profit, whereas a capitalist might prioritize profit above everything else. An environmentalist might be more inclined to value society on an equal ground to profit. And again, a capitalist might say, a pure, more traditional capitalist might say that no, profit's more important than anything else. I mean, a really extreme example, but this can create conflicts in group work. I want to go quickly. I want to get to the core of the topic to save time. But people in the same occupation tend to hold similar values. People within the same organization tend to hold similar values in a way that's good because it creates kind of a common framework, and it creates a mutual understanding of kind of it's a good bed, a good framework to start from, a good foundation. Corporate managers say that self-respect and security are their top ranked terminal values. That means that, after their lives, once their lives are coming to an end, or once their work lives are coming to an end, they want to have people respect them, or they want to be self-respected, and they want to have some type of security at the end. And then how do they believe that they will achieve self-respect and security? Well, they believe that through the instrumental values of truthfulness and dependability, over time, it'll lead them to self-respect and security. I think I have a definition below this. I have a bit of a definition of the terminal and instrumental values. Colin and Pora, these guys right here. So it's it's a very interesting thing. I think often we use the word vision. You hear the word vision kind of thrown around all the time in entrepreneurship class, in business class, in leadership class. But the idea of Colin and Pora is that they try to take something that is used very frequently and try to create a structure around how to actually understand vision by breaking it down into basically four components. Well, 2 components, with each of them have their own subcomponents. So vision provides guidance about what core to preserve and what future to stimulate progress towards. So the way that Colin and Porras visualize vision, the way that Colin and Porras define vision is by looking at core ideology and core purpose. Sorry, where is it? Okay, it's not even written. It's written on separate slides. I think it's at the end. But basically, you have core ideology, and you have the envisioned future. So those are where's the slide with? Oh, here it is. At the end, obviously. So this is kind of the way that Colin and Pora. I'll start with this. This is the way that Colin and Pora view vision. This is kind of the breakdown of their thoughts. And I think this is probably the best concept map to understand that if on an exam you're asked for, what is the vision of the company, you better make sure that you talk about value, purpose, audacious goals, and the vivid description of that audacious goal. Okay, so let's go one by one. So core ideology is what stays the same. It's the constant. That's what's interesting about their model as well. They have the core ideology, which stays core. It's something that remains unchanged despite environment conditions, despite competition. Core ideology will never change in a company. And then you have the envision future element, which is an element that is continuously changing depending on environmental conditions. So it's kind of a two-sided approach. Let's start with the idea of core ideology. It's essentially the consistent identity that holds the organization together. You can see it as the glue, quite literally something that's fixed, something that does not change, and it holds the organization together despite changes in product life cycles, management fads, or even political situations. Right? It stays the same. That's the idea of core ideology. And it's broken down into core values and core purpose. To get all points on the exam, sounds ridiculous, but to get all points on the exam, you're going to have to make sure you mention all three of these, right? You have to mention that core ideology is the glue that holds the company together, and it's separated in core values and core purpose. And typically, you would have to give an example of core values and core purpose for that company. If you're asked about vision, you should elaborate. The core values themselves are some guideless, some principles, some tenets that stick with a company forever. You could look at it almost as a code of ethics or a way of doing business. In your reading, they gave the example of HP. Hewlett-Packard. For some reason, I was like, isn't that a sauce? The example of Hewlett-Packard. And in Hewlett-Packard, even though it was a company that was founded, I think, 70 years ago or 80 years ago, they still have a code of ethics that they stand by even today, that the founder actually created. And in the business that they do, they always stick to that strict, very firm code of ethics, regardless of what's going on around them. Now, you might think it's easy, core values, it's easy to figure out, but it's not always explicitly stated in the text. And we're going to go through the article afterwards, the article from Fairphone, and we will try to determine what are the core values at Fairphone. Now, typically, core values are not going to be more than three. You're not going to have more than 3 or 5 core values in a company. If you have more than that, they're probably not necessarily core values. If you have more than 4 or 5, they might be, some short-term business goals, but they might not be core values. Now, can anybody tell me how you can determine a company's core values in a real-world situation, not in a case? How would you get to the bottom of the core values of an organization? What are some methods and some techniques that are suggested by Colin and Pora for the 3 of you that read the reading and the case? So how do we get to the core values? Okay, maybe. So core values are enduring tenets. How do we figure out how do we get these core values? Any thoughts? Nothing? Crickets? Does that help at all? Yeah. Yeah, tell me.
I think in order to have the core value, the company has to make sure that their value is largely independent of the current environment and also competitive requirement.
Okay, so it should be independent. So one question that you could ask is, if tomorrow the market no longer favored this value, would we still hold it true? And the example they give, do you have the example from the book that they give there?
Yeah.
There are two examples.
I think it's a statement.
So there's the example of quality. Was that it? Was it quality? I think so. I think it was quality. So what if you're a car manufacturer and you ask around and people say you're at a table with a board of directors. They say that one of our core values is quality. Okay. Then as a boss, what I would ask would be, well, okay, if one of our core values is quality, what if in 10 years from now, customers no longer value quality? What if they value design and speed of innovation? That's actually, it's good for fashion industry, right? If you're in a fashion industry and you're looking at traditional fashion, was maybe something that was a very good quality materials, and what if you're at the board and they say, well, is quality a core value? If in 10 years customers start demanding, speed of fashion, like just new things all the time, and just overall design over quality, would you still maintain the quality, or would you start to provide speed and design? So if the answer to that question is yes, we would go with the market and we would provide speed and design, then that determines that, well, quality is not a core value. So one of the ways to figure out if it's a core value or not is to ask a very simple question: does it depend on external conditions? If the external conditions were to change to make it unfavorable even for you to maintain this value, would you keep it or not? If you were to keep it, then it's a core value. If you were to change, then it's not a core value. Okay. So the idea, can you envision that the fashion industry has been upended by companies like Zara, which is fast fashion. The quality itself is not necessarily resilient or robust. The materials aren't that amazing, but they are successful because they are, what they are working on is just production and basically their distribution, right? And the speed at which they can go from design to production to sale. That's really what is core to them. Their core is really speed. That's what they're really good at, just being fast. When fast from the idea side, one day some famous person wears it, and then the next week it's on all the shelves of all the Zaras across the world. That's what they're really good at. That's a core value for them is speed, not necessarily quality. Does that make sense a little bit? So it's something that it's how we do business, and it's not going to change regardless of the external environment. Core purpose, again, it does not change, but it answers more the question of why do we exist? And I'm not going to ask the question because it seemed like it took too much time to get an answer. But one way to figure out the core purpose of the organization, there are a couple of interesting ways. One of them is to just keep asking why. So keep asking the question, why? So why do you do what you do? And the question is going to be answered, and you ask why again. So asking why 5 times will get you to a deeper level of understanding the purpose of the organization. The other way, which is pretty cool, is the corporate serial killer approach, which is that somebody approaches a corporation and tells the corporation, I'm going to buy you out. Okay, I'm going to make sure that everybody in the company gets a job of equal or higher pay, a job that uses their skills and their abilities completely. And I'll give a fair evaluation to the company, a market fair evaluation. So everything's very fair. I'm buying the company very fairly. Everyone will be treated with respect. Then I'm going to take that company and I will destroy it. I will kill the company. I'll take it. I'll give you fair evaluation. Everybody's going to get a job, but I will destroy it. The company will no longer exist in any way. Okay, this is kind of an interesting thought experiment. So why would the board of directors or the owners still want to keep the company? Right? Because the organization itself is not just of monetary value, all right? It's not something that can just be bought. It's not just a question of the company itself. It's a question of the purpose of the company. the underlying purpose of what the company is doing. That's kind of an interesting approach to understanding the core purpose. Is if an investor was to come in, buy the company out, give everybody fair, adequate jobs, but then completely close the company down, why would the board of directors be hesitant to do that? Because there's some deeper purpose that they're achieving through this company. That's another way to look at the core purpose. Why do we exist? Core ideology is something that is it's something that is discovered. Okay, you do not necessarily create a core ideology or set a core ideology. It's something that actually exists. You can't force it upon a company. It has to be meaningful, and quite often, when you're hiring people to become part of the organization, they're predisposed to be sharing this core ideology. So it's not just the core ideology is not a perfect statement for the outside world. It's a reality representing the inside of the organization. It's not like a marketing and branding statement, the core ideology. It's a reality that exists inside the organization more than anything else. And it's independent of external trends. Any questions on core ideology? We'll just break it down into core purpose and core values. I'll take a sip of water. All right. So envision future is the second kind of component of Colin and Porras's definition or structure on what the vision of a company is. And the envision future is the element of their definition that is flexible, that changes over time. And its two components is the BHAG, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal, which is basically a big goal, like reaching for the moon, reaching for the stars. And the component of vivid description, which is basically a description of what the organization would look like upon achieving that big, hairy, audacious goal. And sorry, just before I forget, the core ideology is something that can never really be attained or grasped. It's very, very long term, whereas it should never change. Whereas the envisioned future, it changes typically every 10 to 30 years. There are some drawbacks, but it should change every 10 to 30 years. It's much more of a flexible process. So, big, hairy, audacious goals, 10 to 30 years. It's a powerful way to stimulate progress. It's clear and compelling, and it basically unifies the employees of the organization toward achieving one big goal. It's like saying that we're going to put a man on Mars. It's like Tesla, it's like Elon Musk saying that he's going to commercialize flight, basically, he's going to not commercialize, but make space travel available to everybody, right? Make it accessible, space travel accessible. That's kind of a big, hairy, audacious goal. Something that is achievable, but it seems really out there. It's a big mountain to climb. So what's amazing is that it links people together, it puts people together, and it creates a catalyst for team spirit and people working together. And it shouldn't really take that much explanation. You know, like putting a man on Mars, it's pretty clear what I mean by that. So we're going to put a man on Mars. How is a different story, you know? But it should be pretty clear of what the idea is, that everybody in the organization can kind of get on the same boat. It's of course not a sure bet, right? It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but it's not a sure bet. And we have to realize that the whole thing about envisioned future is that it's flexible. It's bound to change because the environment is always changing. One of the caveats, one of the potential risks of creating a BHAG or something that has to be considered in the BHAG is that the idea of the we've arrived syndrome. So what happens once you actually achieve this huge goal? How do you continue to motivate people after that? So once you've gotten somebody to Mars, that you kind of have this big climactic moment where everything is great and we've actually gotten there, but then what? Right? Once you've arrived at that situation, then what? So there could be actually a loss of motivation and a falling apart of the team once you actually achieve that big goal. That's something that you have to be kind of considering. The envisioned future, which is the second part of the the vivid description, which is the second part of the envisioned future. Essentially, it's something that people can carry around in their minds. It's a very specific, vivid description that conveys passion and conviction that'll help the employees envision that big, audacious, hairy goal, envision achieving that big goal. So it's basically, it helps drive motivation and passion and helps tie in that emotional element to it. And that is basically how Cullen and Pora define vision. It's something that is, it's a way of basically preserving the core, the value and the purpose, the core ideology, but yet still having the flexibility to stimulate progress and accept that the environment will be continuously changing through the idea of envisioned future. So again, on an exam, if you ask the question on vision, you'd have to mention all of these 6 elements. Right? That vision breaks down core ideology, which is basically solid, does not change. It maintains the core purpose and core values, and you even give examples of core purpose and core values.